This is the beginning of an interview with Mr. Loyd Flowers. He lives in Onega, right in town here. Do you not, Mr. Flowers? What is your address?
401 Western.
And you are 77 years old. You were born in May 8, 1925. We're meeting with history students at the High School of Onega in the classroom of Blake Barons. My name is Dean Schoengert, and I will be the interviewer. I am the coordinator of our county for the Veteran Oil History Project. Fred, in what war did you serve?
World War II.
World War II?
And Korea.
And Korea also. What was your branch of service?
Army Infantry.
And what was your rank when you...
When I enlisted,
No, when you came out.
Captain.
I see captain bars on your hat there, sir. Well, what were you doing before you went into the service?
I was in high school.
You were in high school. Were you a senior? Were you drafted, or did you
No,
enlist?
I enlisted.
You were enlisted before you graduated from high school?
No, I graduated from high school. But in those days, if you were drafted, you had no choice of service. And I wanted the Army Infantry. If I enlisted, I would get the branch I desired. And that's why I enlisted. I graduated in May from Havensville, Kansas. And June the 13th, I was in the Army.
June the 13th. Uh-huh. So that's some, just like some of the students here this morning. So where did you go to be, where was your first trip? Where did you go to enter?
Well, I entered the service at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas for 3 days.
Fort Leavenworth. Did you drive down there, or
No, I went down with another group on the bus.
on a bus? And that was where you were inducted.
Mr. Barons, would you please do your lunch count?
What do you remember about that those 3 days there in Leavenworth?
I was eager
You were eager.
to be assigned.
Did they give you a uniform there?
Oh, yes.
And then where did you go from there?
Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Alabama.
Mhm.
That's where you received some basic training?
14 weeks of infantry basic.
How did you get there?
By a train, a decrepit train.
Rather old train. You remember how many days it took you to get there?
3.
3 days. And you basically stayed on that train for 3 days with a bunch of other, with a group of other gentlemen entering
Big-faced kids.
How did you eat? How did you sleep?
I don't recall that. It wasn't. I think there was a mess. One car had a mess containers in there.
Uh-huh.
So let's swap out of that.
Did you know where you were going when you got on the train?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did. Uh-huh. So you arrived at this camp in
Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Alabama,
Right near Anniston, Alabama.
Anniston. I don't know where that is in that state. Is it a central or a southern part, or what would you say?
I don't know for sure.
Uh-huh. So
It was down in where the swamps are.
where the swamps are in Alabama.
Real damp.
Mm-hmm. And what was basic training like?
14 weeks of learning discipline, conditioning, and initial weapons of war.
Were you assigned to a squadron or
Well, it was company.
a company?
I have a picture of that.
Do you have a picture of that?
I found it.
Well, yeah. So you lived in Quonset huts, or?
No, we were tar paper shacks that had one squad in it, the 12 men.
Oh. And then there's so many squads makes up a company.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know how to march when you got there?
No, I knew how to shoot a rifle. I grew up shooting a rifle.
But you had to learn the orders for marching and
Oh, of course. PE.
physical
Physical
education,
ed every morning. Shoes, shorts, and dog tags.
dog tags,
Our dress.
latrine was outside or inside?
It was separate.
Separate building.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
It was a little shack too.
14 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any long marches or anything like
30
that?
miles.
How many miles?
30 miles at a time.
30
Full
miles
pack.
with a full pack.
Mhm.
Huh? And did you have to camp outside? And did you have
Oh
some?
yes. When you made your 30 miles out there, you had to camp out. You didn't have the quite the strength to go back 30 miles at a time.
Uh-huh.
It took a whole day.
Whole day.
Mm.
What were some of the weapons you trained on?
Well, we first started with the infield, and then
Infield is a rifle.
mhm, when the Duran M1s came out, we were blessed with getting those finally.
You like that rifle much better?
Oh yeah.
You have any machine gun training or?
Yes. Light machine gun, 60 millimeter mortars.
Uh,
I had more training on other things later on, but those are the basics.
uh-huh.
Entrenching tools that you use to dig foxholes and pickaxes.
Yeah. The hand grenades. Do you train with those?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Live ones.
So each squadron had. Did you have a?
It's not a squad. It's a squad. I mean, it's a squad, not a squadron.
Okay.
Squadron is Air Force.
Thank you.
Squad is one squad. There's 4 squads at that time to a platoon.
Mhm.
4 platoons made a company.
4 platoons made a company.
Mm-hmm.
Each squad would have different weapons, or were you all
Well,
riflemen?
Yes, we all carried our rifles. But on our training range, we would switch to the mortars and the hand grenades. The 60 millimeter mortar was my favorite. It was very, we could get up and run with it if we had the ammunition. That was later on.
So after the 14 weeks, then where did you go, or where were you assigned?
I went to the 42nd Division, Camp River, Oklahoma, near Muskogee.
More training, or what did you do
That
there?
was a division, 42nd Division, Rainbow.
Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard about that.
It was one of the decorated divisions in World War One.
Mhm. So how long then were you in Oklahoma?
Well, we were gearing up to go to war, and I was there several months with more training, heavy mortars, machine guns, and I don't know just when it was, but they came around to our companies and on a selection board of some kind, which I don't know how they did that. But they selected certain people from the division to go up before a board, spick and span. And it ended up they picked a few out of our division, and we were sent to the Father of the Infantry, Fort Benning, Georgia. I received special training there.
You called that the Father of the Infantry in Fort Benning, Georgia,
The home of the infantry.
home of the infantry.
Mm-hmm.
More training there.
Oh, yes. Intensive training.
Uh-huh. And then, what happened?
Well, from there, I was assigned to Fort Camp Fannin, Texas, for a short while, staging area more or less. And a short stop in Blackstone, Virginia, Camp Blackstone. From there we went to Camp Shacks, New York, port of embarkation.
So that's about a year after you enlisted,
Mm-hmm.
and then
And I was commissioned
you were commissioned then.
from Fort Benning.
Uh-huh. You came a lieutenant at that time?
Second John.
Second John, what's that?
That's what we call him.
And then, where did you go? New York.
Well, Camp Shacks, New York was a port of embarkation.
And so, did you then go to the European theater?
Oh yes,
You got there by ship?
a victory ship. We were in convoys. They called them victory ships, the little ones. The high seas, they were so small you rattle around in there like a rock in a tin can.
How many men were you are on one ship? You recall?
Not near the numbers of the big ships. These were troop transports that had been devised to carry troops speedy. Took us 14 days to get to the channel.
Was it a rough crossing?
That's why you felt like a rock in a tin can. Everyone was sick.
Everyone was sick.
Very sick.
And did you have any submarine scares or anything like that?
We lost one ship.
You did.
There was 21 in our fleet. I mean, in the convoy, we lost one on the outside.
Really? You mentioned you went to the Channel. That's the English Channel. And where did you land there?
We went up the channel into the North Sea, and we somewhere in the Netherlands was where we reached port.
I see. So
I don't know.
our Allied forces had already landed in.
Yes. The 42nd had already gotten there. They got, St. Lo was. They had 40% casualties in St. Lo.
Wow. You were able to land safely there in Holland.
Yeah, that was clear at that time. It wasn't clear later.
And then you moved on inland?
There I was assigned to the 78th Division. That's a streak of lightning. And they formed a special unit over there, 311th Combat Team from the 78th, and I was in that. And I stayed in that all through Europe.
So,
And after the war, before we came home, they disbanded us overseas, the 311th.
where did you first meet the enemy?
I don't want to go into that too much.
That's all right. You landed in Holland and you moved towards Germany, I assume.
I was in 8 different countries over there.
You were. So you fought your way across.
Down and back.
By down, you mean?
Deeper into Europe. France, Germany, Austria, Luxembourg, Belgium, Holland.
You have any unusual experiences you are willing to share at that time?
Not
With the
that I
people
recall well.
of the countries, or?
Oh yeah, with people. I'd say that the most innocent victims of any war are the starving old people and the thousands of little homeless children. And you couldn't help.
You experienced that in many of these countries. Were you able to use air support in some of your?
Well, yes, when we heard the bombers coming, but we were really on our own most of the time.
Can we imagine during that time you were often in a foxhole, moving on and on, or?
A lot of times we didn't have time to dig any foxholes.
Somebody had to get food to you. How was that possible?
Sometimes it couldn't be. We used a lot of what they call K rations, which is a concentrated food, in lake patches, and then sea raisins were supposed to be a treat. Yeah.
Was the C ration better than the K rations, or?
Well, they had some biscuits in each can. There was two cans. One was food and one was supposed to be a biscuit. We called them dog biscuits. They were hard to chew leather. And we couldn't spare any of our water or anything to soften them up. They were really good.
How did you get drinking water?
Shell holes. Things like that.
You had some kind of tablets to purify the water, or?
Sometimes.
You were an officer then, in charge of,
The 311 combat team.
so that would be about how many men were you in charge of, sir?
We started with 208.
So you experienced a lot of casualties during this time.
Which is always that way.
I sense it's a little hard for you to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you towards the end of the war?
Marburg, Castle, I don't know for sure.
That was southern Germany somewhere, or? How did you hear that the war was, that Germany had
No, the troops were waiting to get out of there. It was passed on pretty fast.
Mhm.
We had some vehicle left, little jeeps and things that we could get around in. I do recall, speaking of those children, I recall Sergeant McDonald and myself. We had a jeep that would work, and we were trying to feel our way through this supposed to have been safe town, through the rubble, and we had a shot crack over our heads, and we bailed out of the jeep, of course.
What over your heads? A shot?
You know, it cracks over your head when it goes. That way you know it missed you. The crack of the head over the shot. And we did. The only standing building we could see was had an upstairs. So we got into it. No one downstairs, but there was in this. We went up the stairway and there was a kid up there, and we asked him if he was armed, and then we saw that he had a rifle between his legs, and he also acted like he was anxious for us to show up. So with our carbines, we told him to drop it, and we put it down on the floor. And he was dry saying he was 13 years old, but he was told to be up there and fire at any enemy he saw. And we took the old decrepit rifle away from him, and it only had 2 more shells in it. That's how they treated their kids. So finally we didn't know what to do with him. We had no food. He had a grandfather somewhere in there. And so we took him downstairs and sent him on his way. Broke the rifle, of course, but I don't know how it fired anyway. They were exposed to things like that, those kids. They were innocent kids.
You experienced a lot of children in Germany that were enlisted to fight like that.
At the last, especially.
Especially at the last, yes. Well, when they told you that Germany has stopped fighting, what happened then?
Well,
You come home immediately, or?
Not immediately. We ended up at Bremerhaven from the North Sea on the way to the river, and we were told that there would be a ship waiting for us. Well, when we got there, it was a submarine pins, German submarine pins. They'd all been bombed, and the channel was full of all the debris. So they had to get dredges in on it, ship dredges, to dredge out a channel so we could get out and bring a ship into us. And they eventually did. But we couldn't stay in that area because of the stench of the thousands of bodies under the rubble. So I remember we found a Danish train that was starting to operate down in there. And I got the orders for my guys that were left to go to Denmark, Copenhagen. And we went up there and we chowed down, we had food. We spent a week up there. And that was our coming home present, I guess. Yeah. But the Danish people were real nice to us. They spoke English, of course. They weren't damaged. When we got back to the harbor, we boarded, we had a victory ship going over. We boarded the Rensselaer. I remember that USS Rensselaer. It was a German troop carrier that had been captured. That's what we came back to the United States on. It wasn't any better than a victory. Yeah.
Were you immediately then mustered out of the service, or?
No. We came into Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, and got on troop trains 3 days later. Well, we were in New York. I guess it relate that. They couldn't handle us there, so we found a sergeant at Kilmer that would bring us into New York. We knew we couldn't leave for 3 days. And it was in the summertime, the 3rd of July. And all we had was our winter. That's all we had left. So we got into New York and found us some rooms. The Liberty Hotel, I think it was. So we thought we'd tour New York, and luckily we had a cab driver from Iowa originally. We were, the three of us, Wojnowski and Evans and I, were buddies, survivors. And we wanted him to tour the town. He asked us about Jack Dempsey's restaurant. Well, Jack Dempsey was a heavyweight champion of the world. So we went down and we spent 4th of July dinner in Jack Dempsey's. Had bolognese and steaks and strawberry shortcake. And Jack Dempsey happened to be in there that day. And he noticed us. He came over and talked to us. And we had our picture taken with him. And he autographed it. And I have that picture.
You have that picture. Well, you've told us some of the more happy experiences you had, those 2 events, going up into Denmark and New York. As an officer, what was the toughest decision you had to make?
Leaving your dead buddies behind.
That was the tough one.
With a dog tag.
Dog tag was way of
Your identification. There's 2 on each chain. The dead soldiers, you'd take one off, and it had a little groove in it. You'd open your mouth, put it in there, so the body wouldn't bloat near as fast. And then you'd take the other one with you to turn in when you got brought back, if you did. Different times.
As an officer, you didn't have to write to the families, did you?
I usually didn't have any paper to write on.
Well, so you were, how long were you in the service then?
20 years.
20 years.
Mhm.
So, what between World War II and the Korean War, what were you doing?
I was never discharged. I enlisted and I got a retirement. I retired. I was never discharged. I was kept on hold. At first they thought they would probably use parts of my unit to go to Japan if they needed. Of course they dropped the bomb, so we didn't have to go. And we stayed on as advisory through the Korean War, and I had that much time. So I ended up, I switched to the Infantry Army Reserves, and I retired from there.
So, there was some thought that you might have to fight in the Pacific then also.
Mhm.
But the bomb was dropped, the atomic bomb was dropped, and that ended that before you.
Oh, yeah, there.
Did you actually get to Korea in the Korean War?
I was called up, and they put me on a advisory panel, they called it, because of our past experience, I guess. And that's what they used us for.
Okay.
No combat was for it.
Any other comments you'd like to make, sir?
No, I think that's enough.
Well, we might like to. Did you bring something here to show to us?
Well, I found that yesterday, I think. It's that company picture. It's all rolled. I don't know if you
Sure.
do any good with it or not. It's a big long one if you want to call it.
I see.
I did find my picture in there. That was from basic training. October 1st, 1943. It won't stay around.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Flowers, for your willingness to come here today, and we will add your story to the World War II history. And as these students study that part of American history, this will make it a little more personal. We thank you very much.
You asked me about some medals if you want. I have them in my pocket, a few of them if you want to know those.
Please.
Okay. Not medals, the list. Army Commendation Medal, Residential Unit Citation, Regimental Unit Citation, Expert Infantryman, Army Good Conduct. Well, yeah. Some of them now I see carry good conduct. That's all the ribbons they have. That's the ETO.
ETO means European Theater War.
Theater, 2 stars. The rest of them are more immaterial. Retired Army Infantry. World War II victory, Korea, Armed Forces Reserve. That's it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Flowers. We're proud to have you live in our community.
I'm glad it contributed something to you.
Thank you.
You bet.